guys, welcome back to my beginner's guide. I'm making this special episode to demonstrate and explain how wiring works in Terraria. Normally I don't do wiring, so I recorded several more episodes after clearing the dungeon and realized that the time to explain wiring really is after the dungeon because we have unlocked the Mechanic NPC. Now she sells most of the stuff that we need to do any kind of wiring. You need at least one of these wrenches. I've got all three for the sake of the demonstration, but for now you can get away with one. You also need the wire cutter to remove wire that's placed. You need a good amount of wire. I'd say 50 would be a good amount to start with for simple projects. And we also need a few switches, a few actuators. We want at least one pressure plate that activates when a player steps on it, and one pressure plate that activates when anything but a player steps on it. I also recommend picking up the Mechanic's rod, as it's the best fishing pole you can get right now. So that's everything we need from the Mechanic. We also want a statue that can drop an item like the heart statue, a statue that summons a monster such as the skeleton or chest statue, and then we also need some timers. We also want some dart traps that are found all throughout the world. I recommend just collecting them as you find them. The timers have to be crafted though, and I'll show you how to do that. You need 10 bars of any metal except iron or lead. Tungsten is the equivalent of silver, and that level of bar is going to give us the 3-second timer, which I find to be the most useful. If you use gold or platinum, you get a 1-second timer, and if you use copper or tin, you get a 5-second timer. So besides the 10 metal bars, you also need one chain. And the crafting station we need to use is a chair next to a table. That will allow you to craft a watch. After that, if you go next to an anvil, you can combine the watch with one wire to make your timer. So that's how you make timers. Now that we have everything we need, I'm going to head over to a special world that I've set aside to demonstrate this wiring. Okay, so for our first lesson we're going to set up a very basic wiring system to control light. I'm just going to make 2 towers with a little bit of space between them. We're going to put a torch on this side and not a timer, a switch on this side. Alright, so flipping the switch doesn't do anything. We use our wrench to place wire, and we're going to connect the switch to the torch. That's it. So now when I flip the switch, the torch goes off. So the way that wiring works is that you have input devices and output devices. And an input device sends an impulse down whatever wire is connected to it, and the output device is triggered by that impulse. And output devices either have a event such as spawning a creature, or they are an on and off toggle such as lights. We can also use the wire cutters to remove the wire, and note that the output device will maintain whatever state it had while it was wired. So we wired it up, turned the light off, and after removing the wire, the torch is still out. And just to prove that the wire has been removed, flipping the switch has no effect. We can also wire up multiple things to a single switch and activate them both at the same time. So now we have one light that's on, one light that's off, and flipping the switch will toggle both items. And it doesn't matter where the switch is in the chain of the wiring. It can be placed in the middle, or it can be placed at the end of a string, such as this, and it will have the same effect. So in the second lesson, we are going to talk about pressure plates. We have these gray pressure plates which activate when a player steps on it. We're going to place one on this side of the door, one inside of the house, and then we're going to run a wire from the pressure plates to the door to the other pressure plate. And what this is going to do is anytime we step on the pressure plate, it will open the door. This is a handy way to have an automatic door that you don't have to click on. Now we can also discuss the different color wrenches. What different color wrenches do is run a separate color of wire, and this wire is independent of the red wire, so if it crosses it, it doesn't matter. It is still only connected to this inside switch, and we're going to attach this to a statue. And you can see, let me clean this up a bit. You can see that only the blue wire gets triggered by this plate, because the skeleton does not get summoned by this first pressure plate. Only the inside plate. And if I dismiss my guardian, I can demonstrate that monsters do not activate the player-only pressure plates, which is going to be useful for setting up some traps. Alright, in lesson 3 we're going to cover basic traps. First thing we're going to do is dig a pit that's a little too deep for monsters to climb out of. This should be plenty deep enough. And we're going to line the wall with dart traps. Then at the bottom of the pit, we're going to place a yellow pressure plate. And what this is going to do is, as the monsters try and jump out of the pit, they'll repeatedly jump on the pressure plate, activating our dart traps. So next we need to wire everything together, and then using a separate color we're going to run a wire from a monster spawner such as the skeleton to a switch. So now we activate the switch, make our ravens go away. Helps if the skeleton comes towards us. Alright, so let's swap these two then. Skeleton goes on this side, and the switch can go on this side. Alright, let's help him fall in the pit here. There we go. So there we can see the darts get fired. Not every single time he jumps on the pressure plate. There is a cooldown. The dart trap can only be activated so many times, or it has to cool down a certain number of seconds before it can be activated again. Now, I also want to take this time to show you how timers work. Timers are a special item in that they are an input and an output device. And what that means is if we go ahead and wire these traps up to a different color wire, such as green, and run that same wire over to our switch, and then put a 3-second timer on it. Now you can use it as an input device by activating it manually, and it will then send a signal every 3 seconds to whatever it's attached to. It is also an output device where if we have it hooked up to a switch, we can turn the timer on by throwing the switch. And that is a good way to set up a trap system such as this, because it can be activated manually from the safety of your home, and then the timer will take over and continue to fire the trap. Alright, in lesson 4 we're going to talk about actuators. Quite simply, actuators will push things into the background when toggled on and off. And this can be used on most anything, which makes them very powerful. One of the most useful ways to use actuators is to replace doors with them. And we knock that door off and fill it in with solid blocks. We can then place actuators, wire that up, and connect it to a pressure plate. So now, when we step on that pressure plate, these blocks disappear. And just as before, we can do the same thing on this side, and then wire that all together. So now we have a solid wall that disappears when we approach it, and closes behind us as we enter the area. Again, these cannot be activated by NPCs or monsters, which makes them a very, very useful way to set up your doors in your house. This will prevent NPCs from leaving a room, and it will also prevent enemies from getting in. If you've been playing for a while and you've played through a Blood Moon event, then you know that the enemies can actually open your doors during a Blood Moon. They cannot open actuated blocks unless you set it up with a switch the enemies can activate, but I don't know why you would do that. So there's also another trick you can do with actuators. You can set up something of a pit trap. So to do this, we want to dig a small hole under the ground, and we want to put in 1 bucket of lava. And we want to spread the lava thinly enough that a single copper coin will not disappear when thrown into it. Alright, so see, the copper coin did not get burned up. That's what we're looking for. If the copper coin disappears, then you want to extend our pit a little bit more and try it again until the copper coin does not get burned up. What this will do is any enemies that jump down into the pit will, anything they drop will not get destroyed. So I'm just kind of cleaning this up a bit. Alright, so now we want to plant actuators all the way through these blocks, wire them up. Actually, I'm going to use a different color of wire, just so that they do not interfere with this switch here. I have to replace the actuators, no problem. Let's try the green wire. And we're going to set that up to the switch on the inside. Now say we ran into a small problem there. The switch that opened the door got knocked out when these blocks disappeared. So we're going to solve that problem. Well, there we go. So we're going to solve that problem by removing the actuators from the closer blocks. And then resetting up the wiring. And replacing our pressure plate. There we go. So now when we come inside, we close the door behind us and activate our pit trap. Very handy. And just to show how effective a lava pit can be, we're going to place a we call it a chest statue, and we're going to looks like it's already wired to that switch, so we're going to spawn it in and run like crazy. It looks like I set it up to the timer, so it is going to continue to spawn those things. And here we see another flaw in our design. So we're just going to summon our raven to help kill this stuff, deactivate that timer, and hide until the raven kills those mimics. Alright, so to solve this problem, we just need to create a short roof here. Or we can move the switch further away from our door so that it's not on top of our pit. And truth be told, the pit does not need to be this wide. So let us place our switch there. We're going to remove the actuators from the first part of our pit. So now when the pit gets activated, it will not break our pressure plate. Alright, so there we've opened the door. There we've closed the door, opened our pit. That also means that we can actuate these blocks, and if we run around the building here, we can get down there and remove those two. So that way, as the monsters jump up and down trying to get out of the pit, they will continue to take damage. Alright, so now if I throw the switch, run into the house, door gets shut behind me, nasty mimic cannot get into the house, and continues to take damage from the lava. And now he's dead. Now if you're going to set up traps right outside your house like this, I highly recommend digging a tunnel immediately below the lava pit. And that's going to allow us to safely collect any loot that drops. Another thing that is useful with dart traps is that they can be actuated. So we can achieve this by creating a row of dart traps, placing actuators inside of the dart traps, wiring the dart traps, and connecting them to a switch. Now when we activate that switch, the dart traps get pushed into the background. So we can now remove the switch, remove the actuators, and they will stay in the background. So now what we can do is place a 3-second timer, wire up the traps to the timer, and now when we activate the traps, a whole row of darts will fire through each other. Because they are in the background, they do not block each other's shots. Now it should be pointed out that monsters can only take damage from a dart trap every so often. So if you do intend to use this effectively, you need to space out the darts at certain intervals, which I have not done before. One last thing we're going to need is pumps, which are made from 10 iron or lead bars and 2 wire. There's 2 different kinds of pumps. They're made at the anvil. There's an inlet pump, we need one of those, and an outlet pump, we need one of those. So to use pumps, basically every time that the pumps are triggered, they will suck something in and pump it out the outlet. This works with all liquids, whether it is water or lava or honey. To demonstrate, I'm going to move all this water into this box on the right. So we place the inlet pump down low on one side, and the outlet pump we want to place up high on the other side. I need to replace these blocks to allow it room to fit, and there we go. So now you can almost think of the wiring as plumbing in a way. So we've connected the 2 pumps with wire. All we need now is some kind of switch. Timers are really good for this. Why wouldn't let me place it there? I don't know. Put it there. So now when I activate the timer, every 3 seconds it's going to activate this inlet and that outlet. And it's going to pump this water into this chamber. This chamber is almost full. Think one more time. I think that's as much water as will fit in there. So it kind of stops itself. That's how pumps work. One other thing that I didn't show you is that item statues, that's the heart statue and the star statue, can be wired up. Very similar to wiring a torch. And then every time that they receive an impulse, they spawn whatever item they have. The heart statue spawns the hearts that heal you. So if you're going up against a tough boss, it is a good idea to wire up a couple of these so that you have some consistent hearts to grab during the fight. There are also bomb statues that will spawn bombs. I didn't bring any with me, but it's a useful way to just get a ton of bombs and then you never have to worry about having enough explosives. So that's going to be it for this wiring guide. These are all the basics. It gets a lot more complicated than this. I've seen some crazy things set up with wiring, but this should be enough to get you through setting up some basic traps and whatnot if you feel like doing that. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then let me know with that like button. Subscribe to continue watching my beginner's guide as I go further into the game beyond the dungeon, and hope to see you next time.